once again, it's time to go back to space, the final frontier. So, another episode of Star Trek, this one called The Naked Time. Yes, where the whole crew goes crazy, strips naked, and has a big-ass orgy. No. This is an episode where we get to see a Federation base, a planet-side base, where some Federation people were observing a doomed planet and were awaiting the Enterprise to come pick them up before the planet crumbled away with, I guess, gravitational forces as the star died or something or other, I forget. They're all dead by the time the crew arrives, and Mr. Spock and another, a lieutenant or officer, what have you, they go down to inspect the place, and they find everyone dead from an apparent suicide and even in cases of murder, where some guy is just sitting there, and it's all rather creepy looking. They did a good job. As simple and minimalist as it is, it's a pretty cool, creepy looking frozen set of this station or base where all the damage has happened, and you see a guy who's frozen to death sitting at a console of some sort, and then a mannequin on the floor. It's a woman who apparently was strangled to death and also frozen on the floor, and it's clearly a mannequin, but well, what are you going to do? Interestingly enough, once again, since this is one of these bases, out in deep space somewhere, the mannequin is actually dressed in one of the old outfits from, again, the Pike era. And so, of course, you can chalk that up to, they just didn't get the new uniforms yet. So, I guess you could say that. That's what I'm going with. But anyway, of course, it's some strange alien pathogen of which the Federation has no knowledge that affects the mental state of people and the crew members. And so you had all these people going a little nuts, or not a little, a lot, and ended up killing themselves, and also damaged the life support systems at the base, which caused it to freeze and everything. And they found a guy dead in the shower, but he was fully clothed and this sort of thing. And they're like, gee, wonder what happened. We don't know. Well, the crewman that's with Spock, for 1 second, takes off his spacesuit glove and comes in contact with this alien pathogen, and you actually see it jump to his hand, and after which he keeps having this sensation that there's something on his hand and he can't wipe it off, and eventually he goes insane. He becomes incredibly depressed about what they walked in on here and seeing all the death and everything, and eventually becomes rather suicidal himself, becomes violent, and Sulu and another crewman tried to stop him, and he ends up falling on a knife. And but as a result of this, Sulu and the other crewman, O'Reilly, I believe he was called, they came in physical contact with the man. So apparently, if you touch the bare skin of someone, like the hands in this case, then the pathogen passes on to you. So both Sulu and O'Reilly immediately, he calls for help after the guy fell on the knife that they were trying to stop him from stabbing himself, and they ended up he breaks loose and falls on it. And so the guy calls for help, and immediately he starts wiping his hands as if there's something on it. And there's blood on his shirt, but not on his hands, but he keeps rubbing at it. And so that's how, and you hear the little noise. Oh no, he has it and all this. So, of course, when they get back, they do, before this happens, a decontamination session within the transporter room, but apparently it wasn't good enough because this is some new pathogen that they don't know about, and so they didn't have any procedure by which to neutralize it. And of course, McCoy has no experience with it, so he doesn't find it in his examinations of them. But then clearly things start to go wrong, and after they report on what the planet station looked like, Kirk says, "Well, could this happen here?" And they're all sort of, "I don't know." Of course, the answer is yes, it can, and it does. So it passes on from one to the other. And another interesting thing about the chronology of these shows, I don't know when they were shot or what have you, but all of a sudden Nurse Chapel's here, and we have a later show that introduces her. and reveals the fate of her husband. Don't want to spoil it. And she ends up being a part of the crew. Well, here, out of chronological order, I guess, just like with Where No Man's Gone Before, which was the second pilot they shot, is actually the third episode in the timeline of how they originally broadcast the shows. So it should have been the first episode, but it's the third. So, things like that. So anyway, here's Nurse Chapel, and she's already in love with Spock. And, of course, she gets infected, I believe, not through Sulu, but O'Reilly, I think. And she succumbs to it, and she can't hide her true feelings for Spock. And Spock comes by, and she touches Spock. And now even Spock, he's not immune to this disease, and he starts to break down. He can't hide his emotions that he has, and he starts crying and everything. Meanwhile, O'Reilly goes nuts and locks off the engine room and takes it over, and the ship is in danger of crashing into the planet. And meanwhile, there's all the gravitational disturbances as the planet is destroying itself, and so they need to get out of there, but they can't because the idiot has locked off the engine room, and Scotty's got to cut a hole in the door to get it open and all this sort of thing. And by the time they get in there, Scotty says, well, the guy shut off the engines and they're too cold, so it's going to take me 30 minutes to re-energize them. And Kirk says, we don't have 30 minutes. We're about to collapse to the planet. And, of course, Scotty says, I can't change the laws of physics, And, of course, they're going to do just that. So he needs Spock to come in and come up with a formula by which they can create implosion, whatever that means, in order to, jettison themselves out of there and restart the engines faster. And so, of course, they're going to do it. But meanwhile, Spock is having his, emotional breakdown. Kirk goes to confront him, and then he catches the disease. And here, because the show's about to end, we don't have time for him to go through any stages or anything. So immediately, Kirk, I've got it. I've got the disease. And he starts, this ship, I give, and it takes. Now I know why it's called she. And of course, now this is Captain Kirk's in total essence of his obsession with the ship, and that's his one true love, is the Enterprise. It's not any of the women he's been with, it's the Enterprise. And he goes on about Yeoman Rand, because at the time I think they were insinuating that there might have been an eventual romance between him and Yeoman Rand, but due to the problems that the actress had at the time, I think it was drug abuse or something like that, she was let go, and that story was just sort of scrapped. And Kirk would be the type of guy who would, the girlfriend of the week type thing, which a lot of shows did. So the idea of Kirk having a mainstay girlfriend was probably something they were never going to do. But the obsession with the Enterprise and all that continues well into the movies and beyond. It's one of those things that I thought they missed when they had a really bad film, which was Generations, where the Next Generation meet Captain Kirk. Well, basically Picard does, and that's it. But they show Captain Kirk in that, the Nexus world, and he's living out his fantasy life. And it's him living on a ranch and having a chance to be back with some old girlfriend named Antonio or something like that, Antonia. And I'm like, no, he would be on the Enterprise. He even says it in the movie, tells Picard not to give up the captain's chair because as long as you're there, you make a difference and that sort of thing. So that was a missed opportunity there. But here, even though it's kind of hacky and it's quick and forced and it's Shatner being Shatner all over the place, it does pretty much set the standard there of what Kirk's all about. And so there you have that. So, of course, they come up with the formula. Spock figures it out, and they attempt it, even though it could mean they're just going to destroy the ship in the attempt. But they had to try something, or they're going to die anyway. So they do it, and of course it works. Now, what's interesting about this is when you have these shows and prequels, like a certain STD, using time travel elements in it, and having the Federation experiment with time travel and all of that. None of that fits, because this is the episode where the Federation discovers that time travel, yes, is possible. And they do it rather by accident. Here, where they do the implosion formula and they're able to save the ship and push it out, but they're going so fast that they break the time barrier and actually travel 3 days back into the past. And they have to just go through those 3 days again, only they, of course, will not relive the days exactly as they just did, but they'll just go back on course, but they've gone back 3 days into the past. So, and this sets up for later shows where they deliberately go back in time now that they've discovered they can travel through time, of course. And so there you go. It establishes that time travel is possible, and this was produced as a new thing. It's like it was a theory, but they never, no one had ever actually achieved it as far as they knew. And yet Star Trek Discovery would have us believe that Harry Mudd had a time machine, and then, of course, Michael Burnham's parents had a time machine suit because the Federation needed one because they were afraid the Klingons would make one, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, none of that fits. Not any of it. But it was a secret. No, it's not secret when Harry Mudd's running around killing Captain Lorca over and over again with a time machine on his wrist. Which the Discovery immediately forgets for its second season. They completely forgot. They can't even keep up with their own continuity. But anyway, that's another story. Here we are with classic greatness, with some silliness here and there, but nevertheless, an interesting view of things about the Federation, and of course, of dealing with bizarre pathogens, which is constant for Dr. McCoy, who comes up with a cure. Of course he does. Easily the best doctor who's ever lived. But of course, that's one of the risks out there when you encounter new environments, new worlds, and new civilizations. There could be all these weird pathogens out there that could do God knows what to you, and you gotta prepare for that. Even though you have all these precautions, it might not necessarily work because this is new and you've never experienced it before. So they did, and one more little tidbit is, of course, this was revisited in Star Trek The Next Generation, and they had to do their own version of it, and apparently it had mutated, and if I remember correctly, the Dr. McCoy solution didn't quite work, so they had to work on that and figure it out. It was most notable because it was the episode when Data and Natasha Yar do the nasty. Yeah, that's right. That's what they did. So there you go. Oh boy, some Star Trek trivia began all the way back here in the naked time. All right, thank you for watching and listening. Say, why not like and subscribe, and check out that link description below. That'll take you to my mini stores that have plenty of goodies for you.